All right, so that beautiful man on this shirt right here is what this video is going to be about. I recently made a David Bowie tribute video and put it on Facebook. Seemed to be a really big hit. I'm sorry if it seems like I'm talking about David Bowie too much. You guys are probably sick of it. I hope you're not, though, because, you know, I'm a fan. I'm a huge fan. So in this video, I wanted to talk about 5 of my favorite albums. Now, this is really, really hard to do because he has so many good albums. In particular, the early 70s to later 70s era. There's so many good albums in between there. So what I tried to do was like try to pick the albums in terms of what his persona was at the time. For example, one of the albums on this list is Station to Station, which was during his Thin White Duke years. I chose Ziggy Stardust when it came to his Ziggy Stardust years, because he has several albums when he's in that persona. It's not only just Ziggy Stardust. You have Aladdin Sane and Pinups, which wasn't as good. So I tried to do it in terms of that, but either way, this was still really hard to do. So let's get started. At number 5, I'm gonna say the album that got me into David Bowie in the first place, which is "The Man Who Sold the World."
Fast upon the sand, we spoke of what and when. Although I was not there, he said I was his friend, which came as some surprise. I'd spoken to his eyes. I thought you died alone a long, long time ago. Oh no, not me. I never lost control. Your price to fight with the man who sold the world.
Yeah, so that was the album that got me into David Bowie in the first place. I'm sure, like many of you guys know about that song because of Nirvana, and Kurt Cobain has a list of top 50 albums that is his favorite albums of all time, and that album's actually on the list. I don't remember where on the list, but "The Man Who Sold the World" is definitely on that list. So that was a huge inspiration to him. So because of that song, I listened to the rest of the album, and I was blown away by how good it was. And I think that was, when was that? I think that was around like my freshman year in high school, the year I started getting into good music. And so ever since then, I've kind of explored his entire catalog of music. And that song is really good. You also have "Running Gun Blues," which is probably my favorite song on there. And yeah, the whole album is really good. So that's his really early years. That was in 1970. It was, I'm pretty sure, his third album, because then you had David Bowie, where it was just David Bowie, and then you had Space Oddity, and then that one. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure that was his third album. So for the next choice, oh God, I had such a difficult time choosing between this album and Hunky Dory, but I eventually went with this album because I think it's just the one I've listened to the most, but I do love Hunky Dory so much. So the next album is "The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust."
People stare at the makeup on his face, laugh at his long black hair, his animal grace. The boy in the bright blue jeans jumped up on the stage, played his stardust, sang songs of darkness and disgrace.
Yeah, wow, that actually made me kind of choked up listening to that song. As corny as it sounds, that's a song where I feel the magic. I get goosebumps every time I listen to that song. One of my all-time favorites. I could have picked tracks I could have picked off that album. I could have picked "Moon Age Daydream" or "Ziggy Stardust" or "Surfeit City." I chose that one because it's probably my favorite. It's hard to say. I love that album as a whole. So, and many people consider that to be his best album, and it's hard to argue against it. For me, it's too hard to pick what his best album is. Like I said, these albums are at the same level. I love them all equally. So, yeah, we're gonna go to the next one. Now, this one was kind of difficult. This is from what is known as his Berlin years. There's a list of albums he made called the Berlin Trilogy, these three albums that he helped make with Brian Eno. And the first one is Low, which is the one I'm going to mention. The second one is Heroes, and the other one is Lodger. And yeah, I decided to pick Low because it's the one that introduced me to this period. And it's also the one where he gets really experimental. There are several tracks on this, such as the opening track called The Speed of Sound, where they're just instrumental. So, yeah, that's the next album we're going to talk about is Low.
Deep in your room, you never leave your room. Something deep inside of me, yearning deep inside of me, talking through the gloom. What in the world can you do? What in the world can you do? I'm in the mood for your love, for your love, for your love, for your love. I'm just a
Yeah, you can definitely hear the difference in sound compared to the earlier albums that I just mentioned. You can hear the experimentation starting to grow, and Brian Eno is a huge part of that. And yeah, it's an album that if you're a Bowie enthusiast and a Bowie fan, you're going to be familiar with. If you're only familiar with Bowie's big hits like Fame or Space Oddity, stuff like that, then you're probably not going to be too familiar with this album. It's very different. There's only one real hit on this. It's called Sound and Vision. You'd probably know it if you heard it. But yeah, I chose that song because that's probably one of my favorites off the album. And like the last side of the album, the B side, is very ambient sounding and instrumental, which is it's a different thing for David Bowie. It's something he started to do, and he would later further that with Heroes. So yeah, that one was hard to choose between that and Heroes. Those are the best of the Berlin trilogy, in my opinion. So yeah, that was Low. Now we're gonna go back a year in 1976, Station to Station, which was his Thin White Duke years, which he started that with Young Americans, which is a great album, but I definitely think this one is better than that one. So yeah, this is Station to Station.
Last night they loved you, opening doors and pulling some strings. Angel, didn't walk luck and you looked in time. Never looked back, walk tall, act fine. I'll stick with you, baby, for 1,000 years. Nothing's gonna touch you in these golden years.
Yeah, probably the whitest man to ever go on Soul Train. But yeah, that was David Bowie getting really funky with it. And yeah, that's a great album, Station to Station. He was pretty much doing something similar like he was doing with Young Americans, which came out the year before. He was getting into soul music. And but with Station to Station, you could definitely hear the difference. He was getting more experimental with it. Not nearly as experimental as you would get later on with like Low and stuff. But yeah, that's the biggest hit off that album is Golden Years probably. Another great one is the title track itself, Station to Station, which is a 10-minute long song, but it's really really good. And yeah, that's one of his best albums in my opinion. So, all right, we've made it this far. Let's see, just to review, we did The Man Who Sold the World, Ziggy Stardust, Low, Station to Station, and the last one, which is the beginning one of the 80s, came out right on the dot, 1980. Scary Monsters and Super Creeps.
The shrieking when nothing is killing, just pictures of trap girls and synthesis. And I ain't got no money and I ain't got no hands. Something's scary, but I'm hoping to kick because that it is glowing. Ashes to ash and fun to funky. We know Major Tom's a junkie, strung out in heaven's high, hitting an all-time low.
God, such an awesome song, super catchy. Yeah, so that's the album Scary Monsters. That was Ashes to Ashes, that really big hit off that album. Also, Fashion was a really big hit too, with some great guitar work from Robert Fripp, who is from King Crimson, and he also contributed some of his guitar work to Heroes as well. So, yeah, for some reason, the albums I've been listening to the most recently in terms of David Bowie's albums is Black Star, obviously. And this one, I keep coming back to this album. I'm not sure why. I just really, really like it. This is a great album. It's very different, like a lot of his work. He never puts out anything boring, you know? And he really is one of the greatest pop culture icons of all time, you know? So yeah, that's a great album. So those are the 5 albums that are probably my favorite. I might change my mind later because I do that a lot, but I love so much of his albums. There are a handful. I can make like a top 15 pretty easily, but I don't want to bore you guys to death. So that's my list for the top 5 Bowie albums, in my opinion. Also, I'm going to be doing my YouTube page now. I'm going to upload this to YouTube, and subscribe. You know what? Support your boy. And I definitely improved with the mic here. You can probably hear the difference in my previous videos. There's a lot of white noise, not so much here. So, yeah, I'm going to start doing these. Hopefully I don't get kicked in the ass by the copyright people, but I'm just going to put down below, I do not own any of this. This is just one man's opinion. So hopefully they'll let me keep the clips up because that's definitely a big part of my video. So thanks for watching.